Hello fellow space engineers, this is Marcelo from ACFM and Gaming, and today I bring you the long-awaited fleet review of 2018. Now, I'm going to be talking about the ships in the center, which, of course, by the pattern, those are mine, and in comparison to the ones on the left. Now, I'm using Aragat's ITW slash Rust faction as my measuring bar. The reason why I'm doing this is, first of all, I think he makes really, let's say, sensible designs, and they fit into a class and category that work as that class and category is intended, by its name, by its classification. And also they don't, like the game to hell, and their sizes are also common in survival service. Now, on the right side, you're gonna see some notable examples of ships in those classes from some of my friends and some other creators. Now, to begin, let's say that these are what I consider the sub-frigate categories. Now, because the one at the top, all the way there, is a frigate class, and they go all the way down to gunboat or patrol boat. Again, these classes have been adjusted not just to comply with what Keen has, basically recognized as official, but with Aragat's design, but also by analyzing what I've seen my friends build in servers. Now, without any further delays, let's begin with the gunboat class. And I'm doing this like in a some sort of like 3D Prezi presentation, zooming in and out. Now, this is the grouper class. Now, as you may know, since this is one of my oldest designs that have been completely, rebuilding from scratch, it was originally designed by Seth, and I believe it's his Okokwan class patrol boat. Now, the patrol boat originally, he intended it as kind of like as a reference to the Vietnam War era PBRs, the Patrol Boat River, and this, can be seen for the layout of the hull itself and the placement of the guns. Now, I believe he had these guns placed closer to the front, and it was even more PBR looking. Now, what I tried to do here is make a ship that was, let's say, being able to be turned into a drone using RDAV's fleet command. And also, I ended up making like I don't know, an attempt of how many Vietnam War reference can you fit into a single super small large crit ship. You have, the PBR look, then you have this like side uh, looking cockpits with, each one you have direct control of this anti-personnel gun. So it's both like a helicopter gunship, like a Huey, and at the same time like a spooky gunship. That's kind of like what I had in mind, like, to follow on Seth's original idea of having something that was Vietnam War inspired, and also something that is fun to play with, which is perhaps the main goal with this entire collection that I have here. Now, some general considerations about this ship. They are brittle. They haven't fully fixed that. Now, damage transfer has been significantly increased on, you know, in its let's say like realism in a way. The way it propagates, for example, it no longer poofs the non-deformable blocks. If this block deforms, then it damages. Collisions damage non-deformables as opposed to just making them disappear. Now, that being said, the resolution issue that we see with a smaller grid. Let's bring an example here. It's still present. Right now, when it comes to Gatling gun fire in full vanilla, a small grid is going to be more durable than a large grid. That still remains. It's silly. I don't think it will ever be fixed because the game how it works. This a single block with a larger surface is going to take more bullets. That's stating the obvious. But the thing is what I call like armor. Now, like armor is, each block needs to be calculated, by your computer, um, for damage, for which block is being in contact with that bullet. And just I think 2 days ago, Whiplash was telling me that it's a ray trace feature, what the game does for calculating, when the bullets are hitting you. And the fact of the matter is, anything that you shoot, like especially Gatlings, when you fire a lot of them, they lag the game to hell. It grinds down to a halt, and that slows down calculations and so on and so on and so on. So you get a super slow game, and the more calculations you have to make, so the more blocks you have, kind of like the more protected you end up being, just out of pure lagginess. So what that means is that there's an interesting comparison here to make. This ship is obviously um, overpowering the smaller one when it comes to firepower. But when it comes to durability, surprisingly enough, these small grids are still more durable. And you get kind of like the same functionality from these two, except for this is not so much of a combat vehicle, and this one is. So the gunboat. How to use this gunboat? I have defined two roles, planetary role and a space role, and then there's a solo role and fleet role. Now, for the planetary role of the gunboat, it's basically going to be used as an attack fighter. For that, I have equipped this one with that Gatling cluster that completely melts armor. It's really useful. The thing is, like I said, it lags. So you have to keep that into consideration. So if you want to plaster a ship like the entire nose with walls of those, then you might as well just Alt F4 the game. So it's going to be used as an attack fighter, and in space it's going to be used as a space superiority fighter. It has a lot of Gatlings. They basically cover the entirety of the sphere of the fighter. These ones can be used as point defense. Actually, I was always doubtful of that, but it can be used like that. And also for landing parties, this is fully atmospheric capable, and boarding or capturing NPC ships. Now, notable examples. The first one that I ever saw was the gunboat by Aragat, again for his Rust series of ships. And this is the one that started this curiosity of making a super, like, a small large grid ship. And these ships are really fun to play with, and as you can see, you can pack them with several interesting features. And I believe this is the Red Devil, the Diablo Rojo, and I think it was made by Slazer, and he has used this in actual engagements in servers and also against larger ships. And this one has a gravity drive, and if you can see, if you can just go full space with these, you can basically add Gatlings in every direction, and you have a buried camera. And something interesting is that because of how the collisions in the game are working, you can hide a rocket launcher behind a heavy armor plate, half block, which is really interesting. Now, moving on, the next class, we have what he called the Decoder. Thanks to Sokonen, actually, he was the one that defined this class as the one that is underneath a Corvette and above a patrol boat. Like in, basically modern, well, not naval forces, like Coast Guard forces use that kind of designation. It's a ship that is not meant to be, directly engaging like other ships and fighting them, rather than, sea control, patrol duties, anti-piracy, inspections, anti-smuggling. Now, in Space Engineers, again, the machine bar, I am using Aragat's. Sorry, this is the. I forgot the name. Things like gunship or shuttle, private shuttle. Always forget that word. We'll think of airport shuttles. So this is more of a dropship, like a personal dropship, and it's a bit smaller than mine, but it fits the same role. This, of course, can be reworked and fitted with larger guns, Gatlings, so on, if you want. But the one that I was aiming for to counter, or to have a similar capacity ship, is the King's old very well-known military escort. It is hinted that the military escort can land on, I don't know, asteroids, moons, or something, and this vessel can be made into a fully, atmospheric capable craft, just adding a bit of hydrogen and this disgusting deformation. Come on, unbelievable. Okay, sorry about that. It's my OCD acting up. Cannot see that. Okay. So, as I was saying, this can be made into a ship that actually lands. And as a matter of fact, Ceph has made a version of this that can land on moons. I mean, you have those large tricycle landing gear. And this is a ship that the way you use it on a planet is basically as an assault gunship. It can escort maybe some people that are bringing down in, light escort duties, light gunship support for some ground vehicles if you wanna, play in a scenario that has those rules. This would be fine. It's also a mobile respawn, let's say, platform location. And pretty much as the standard military escort, it's a single cabin. Seats for transport, like you can take your helmet off here. I managed to put in some RP. I have to furnish the scripts, and it has guns and a direct access. Let's say landing airlock. Well, not an airlock. You have to depressurize the whole thing when you land, but that's fine. I mean, it's a super compact ship. Now, these two are meant to work in conjunction with these other two here, and that's an idea that I have been developing. It's something that if you start with a fleet, let's say you start with the more basic ships, with a Corvette and maybe this gunboat, and you can land or rather dock this gunboat sideways using the standard WMI docking collar by Whiplash, and you enter through here. You have access, these three cockpits. Dock here using this standardized docking collar, which I eventually, I caved in and started using Ceph's docking collar, the protruding version. It's really, really useful. So you can have a Corvette with two of those, and then let's say you want to deconstruct them and build something bigger. You can, build the frigate and then build these two, and you will always have like three ships that can be, constantly upgraded as you go. For it could be 3 people, or like double that, 6 people, and so on and so on. So I wanted to have a fleet that is just not matching in color, but also that it's matching in functionality, and you can match up and make combinations of those ships and upgrade them as you go. Now, moving on to the Corvette class. This is perhaps the one that I have invested more time in. Again, the measuring bar is Aragat's own Frigate Mark 1. This is the hero frigate from the campaign, and I decided to use this as my Corvette class because it's basically an older version, a smaller kind of frigate, lighter kind of frigate, which basically nowadays a Corvette is. Corvette is like a compact frigate or light frigate. And if you compare that with the Frigate Mark II, which is more on frigate size for what people build on servers and accept, like the general consensus is that they call that a frigate. So that to me, like in Space Engineers, that has its own lore in the way that we players create the lore when we play online and interact with each other. So this is my Corvette line, and let's say, not necessarily the direct inspiration, but the motivation that I had to build in the ship was to counter the Invader Emirat class destroyer by Arara. Now, if you have seen my older, like super older, perhaps the first videos that I ever made with Space Engineers, you see that I was, in several occasions, we were fighting the ships and trying to capture them and so on. And this is a destroyer in the, let's say, World War II classification. Something that is, Corvette size, fast, agile, shoots torpedoes at things. And it always reminded me, for some reason, perhaps it's the lines and how slick it looks, of the Isokase class destroyer from Space Battleship Yamato, both the classic series from the 70s and the reimagine or the remake of Yamato 2199. So it had that like slick retrofuturistic look, and I wanted to emulate that in a way. So I decided to rework my Mako class Corvette, which was already like had its slickness in the intention, into something that was similar, of the same class and similar characteristics. And as an homage to the Isokase class destroyer from the Yamato series, I decided to give some sort of like streamlined, modern, Art Deco, retrofuturistic rocket ship fins, and that they turn into this like razor plane kind of landing gear, because I really don't like the game's landing gear. It's a sore thumb. It's really hard to integrate. Here, for example, it's well integrated, but I don't know, like I don't like to have like my whole ship be blocky and squarey just to fit the aesthetics of that. I have to say it's subjectively horrible looking landing gear. Now, the Corvette role, as a planetary role, this is the ship, and here's when we get into thresholds. This is the ship that is going to perform both in a planet and in a space the most similar. In what way? It's really agile in both. And in planets you can bank into your turns thanks to the extra vertical thrust, and you can make tight turns and not worry about sliding away because there's no aerodynamics in the game yet, fingers crossed. So it's gonna perform as an agile fighter, or agile combatant rather. It's gonna be more like a dedicated gunship support, that you're gonna be standoff and bombarding enemy vehicles or installations with the Gatlings. The Gatlings, like I said, they melt everything in the way that they are right now. And you still get some direct fire capacity here with those two clusters of Gatlings. In a space, is going to perform sorry, is going to perform as a capital ship screen or harassing ship. It's really good against smaller, small grid fighters. It basically eats them up due to its Gatling battery. And since it's really fast and it has a lot of, delta V, you can move around circles in a capital ship, and that's the basically the role that we have designated for Corvettes in my play group, and that's why it has decoys at the nose and decoys at the back. Now this right here, this has to happen. This we need this block. It just doesn't make sense that we cannot do that. I wish I could just like glue that thing in. Anyway, that's besides the point. Come on, okay. Now, in a fleet, like I said, it's gonna be fighting, against swarms of fighters or drones in this case, which are going to be more common. It's gonna perform in a goalkeeping role, trying to shoot down, PMWs and things like that. And in a solo role, this is the lower end or the lighter end of what a player can build. And these two ships, the Corvette and the Frigate, are going to be like I call the player's personal ship. Again, this size of vessel is the one that you're gonna find the most commonly being built in survival servers, because in the end, a lot of survival gameplay goes, on a more individual, like loosely aligned basis, unless you have servers that are actually designed for co-op or team play. And traditionally, these ships, some of them people fit them out with refineries, like those two there. I respect that fact that Aragat added that, but I think that is more out of like a faction design theme, because if you know, like in the lore of the Rust or ITW faction, there are colonies or miners that they use mostly converted freighters and industrial ships, and you can easily integrate a refinery like as outside Gribble, and that is also functional because refineries are actually quite sturdy into these vessels. Now, for a more dedicated combat ship, the ones that use the combat wedge design, like mine, that they rely on the narrow and thin profile for fighting. A refinery is not going to be easily to fit in, and perhaps it's a dedicated combat ship. And in my opinion, and again this is just my opinion, if you put a refinery on a ship, you may as well put one or two large cargo containers, and then it just changes your ship completely. It's then you have to protect them. They pop, and I don't know the state of the game how it is today, but they used to spew out all of the contents and basically hollow out your ship. And not only that, it makes it slow. I mean, if you're gonna carry a lot of ore and be processing it at the same time, you don't want to lose that. So if it's a combat ship, and again these are frigates, and a frigate is a combat ship. I know some franchises there makes like industrial frigates and stuff like that. It doesn't make sense to me. So just out of gameplay purposes, it's not like naval classification, snobism, or pedantry, but it doesn't make sense if it's gonna be popped. So you might as well designate a hidden base for refinement, and you have your combat ships that, again, like following something that Seth told me, it's a maxim of EVE Online. You don't fly a ship that you cannot lose, that you cannot afford to lose. So the Corvette is gonna be that. It's gonna be the smallest ship with a jump drive, and it's a good personal ship. And if you lose it, well, you can print out another one. And on the bigger end, we have the frigate. Now, the frigate, like I said, still a personal ship. One single person can, perhaps easily maintain this ship. If you don't mind welding, preparing that much, then this is gonna be a manageable size. Anything bigger than that, at least to me, is gonna be super tedious to just build and prepare, and you know every collision that you get, every impact and weld impact. So the surface area that a single player can work on, this is the maximum, at least in my opinion. Also, this is the biggest ship that you can land on a planet without suffering a lot of performance loss when it comes to space combat. And I say that because, of course, you can land or you can create those gigantic airships, or like helicarriers, like people call them. I would call them aero carriers. Anyway, so this is the largest one that you can have without losing any performance in agility. Now, I do use small turbines, small jet engines, basically as an extender for the you know the range and the fuel usage of the hydrogens. Now, those are dead weight in space, and I have to say I designed this ship so you can remove them if you want, and you don't you get some extra interior space. You can put more batteries, more whatever cargo. So you can basically tailor the ship, this and the Corvette also, and they would still land on moons. So if that's how you like to configure them, that's fine. I wanted to leave that option for whoever subscribed to them. But I discovered that they don't hurt that much in mass. So when you have this dead weight in space, the ship still performs really good. I mean, it has a lot of thrust. As you can see, it has a large hydrogen and a bunch of smaller ones. So that's how I use it. Now, what is going to be the role of this ship in a fleet? Similar to the Corvette, but this is going to be more on directed combat towards when it comes to capital ships. It's going to be able to do more damage to them and still remain agile. And also, it can supplement destroyers with its torpedo tubes. Now, you can print large torpedoes out of this one, and the Corvette can print smaller-ish torpedoes. So they're not the same. Just because they have tubes, they don't mean that they do the same kind of damage. So you can also build drop pods from them. So it has kind of like a lower base spec ops role. Now, it's going to be able to help destroyers into attacking capital ships, but on a planet, this is where it becomes different. This ship doesn't perform as equal in both environments as a Corvette. you can land on a planet, you can fight with this on a planet, but it's not going to be, duking it out, fighting super fast as it can do in space. This is where the whole performance, let's say, vein begins to divert. A ship that is really agile, like this one in space, is gonna be, okay-ish in an atmosphere at this tonnage. The tonnage of this one is 1.5 million, and like I said, anything larger than this is gonna start requiring the larger turbines. And large turbines on a spaceship are a big no-no to me. Like again, like they would make sense if you want to make an exploration ship, more like a civilian vessel. I'm not being, like trying to establish, my opinions as written in stone. But for a combat ship, I have discovered that they hurt you a lot for space combat. So again, they shouldn't be a primary form of trust. They should be more like a supplementary form if you're building a combat ship. So for a lander, a cargo carrier, maybe yeah, you do want the larger turbines. But again, from this point onwards, from the 1.5 million tons, this is where you're gonna start requiring those larger turbines. Now, the measuring rule again, Aragat's Frigate Mark II, which is kind of like the biggest ship that the ITW rebels bring in the campaign when they're fighting the Agelos cruiser from the evil corporation. Basically on um, the same tonnage. Now this one in particular cannot land on a planet, but it can be made into. I will talk about that maybe in a different video when I do a full review of this fleet. The main inspiration for this craft was, or its predecessor rather, is the Naiad Corvette by my friend Sukonen. Now he made the Naiad based off the original Nymph Corvette design, which is the one that the narrate is replacing. As you can see, they all named after sea nymphs or Greek mythology nymphs. And that was a ship that was specifically designed to deal with large numbers of small grids and also destroy the turrets of large capital ships. And this is what this is gonna do, like I mentioned before. Now, like I said, these are, let's say, like the ideas that I have about how to use this kind of vessel, the examples that I have found, online with my friends, other creators, and also a few suggestions on how to build them and how to use them. So I hope you have enjoyed this rather longish video, and the links for all of the ships are going to be published in the description of this video. So like I always say, have fun and keep playing.